with presidential candidate Ferdinand Marcos Jr. dominating the latest partial and unofficial count, numbers indicate he might just be the Philippines' next president. On that note, we have political analyst, UP Political Science Department Professor Aries Arugay live via Zoom. Good morning, Professor Arugay.
Good morning, Sito.
Okay, first off, if elected into office, or well, he will soon be, what can the public expect from Marcos Jr.? Will the people accept this win? Will there be unity as promised? Voices of the masses? What does this mean for our democracy?
Sito, these are all good questions. And honest to goodness, I wish I have clear answers for all your questions. But as what we have seen in the campaign, Mr. Marcos Jr. has only given us very vague statements on how he will be able to deliver on the promises and the motherhood statements that he has said during the campaign. We have heard all nice things from him: jobs, affordable rice, infrastructure. This is all well and good, and I don't think any Filipino would not want to hear all these things. But what we're lacking really are the mechanisms and the processes that are needed for this to happen. So I think the way to approach your question is to really throw it back to the Marcoses and ask them now that they can't evade anymore the tough questions, is how are they going to govern? Because the last time Marcos was president, he did not govern. He reigned like a dictator. So this is I think the burden of the Marcos dynasty.
Okay.
Now it seems that you have won the election, then the tough job comes in, the real job, which is to govern this highly fractious, highly polarized democracy that we have.
Okay, but what about on the international platform, Professor? Because I suppose, 48 hours after he is proclaimed or declared the next president, there is an expectation that foreign leaders will be congratulating him, etc. But there is still the lingering issue of the United States and the legal complexities or legal history of the Marcoses that does not allow them to go to the United States or face arrest. How do you see international relations play out? Are we going to be like an isolated Korea diplomatically, or do you think they're competent enough to wing it?
Right. Well, diplomacy has always been complicated, and our foreign relations is really a challenge for any new president. However, I do think some of the countries, particularly major powers, always see a change of leadership as an opportunity to reboot relations. And I think this is where if really he will be the next president, that Mr. Marcos Jr. needs to play our cards, the Republic's cards, because at the end, he is governing a democratic republic, that he needs to play and craft a strategy that will leverage our national interests. I think, unlike the outgoing President Duterte, he might not have the negative historical baggage that the outgoing president has, and therefore major powers might give him an opportunity to just show what he can do and how he can improve existing relationships.
I think we wish for all of that to happen, but given his legal issues in the United States, that would, I suppose, prevent the U.S. government from engaging with him because of that. Will that drive him to the arms of China? Because they've always said that in the end, China wins.
Right. My academic counterparts in the U.S. have actually not raised those issues, and they basically said that Philippine-U.S. relations needs to improve, even if it if it's a Marcos presidency that will be in the offing. What we need to be clear is that how the U.S. government will deal with this court conviction. We know that it's a contempt of court conviction, and whether there will be some talks, some negotiations that will somehow address these issues before the two governments, the Biden administration and possibly a Marcos Jr. administration, will be able to talk. So I think those need to be ironed out, and we will wait to what extent the Marcos dynasty, the Marcos family, will deal with this as well.
Okay, Prof, this is Danny Laurel, no, jumping in. Based on the campaign narrative that BBM has presented, and even way before, he was always touted to be the successor to his father's so-called legacy, if you could call it that. To what extent should the public expect that he will align himself with the former dictator, and to what extent do you believe, no, this is his chance to possibly redeem the name, to do something completely different? There's a big chunk that are youth voters watching what's going to happen. What's your expectation?
Danny, throughout the campaign, I did not see personally any redeeming moment for the Marcoses. So it seems like now there might be this expectation that he will indeed redeem the family's name. But I think redemption only comes after a truthful admission. You can't be redeemed if you haven't accepted and haven't recognized the unredeemable things that you and your family have done. So I think if indeed that will be the narrative, the first question is, have they actually accepted? Have
Prof,
they actually
as a
apologized?
political analyst, give us an explanation why they don't want to do this. Because it appears, from the public sentiment, if they just do this, if he just owns up to certain things as other people have done, that he might have more of the people's unity and sentiment.
Gloria Arroyo said, "I'm sorry." And they moved
Why
on.
isn't he doing this, especially now when he can, by simply doing this, possibly at least get a little bit of the trust of everybody else?
Right. I think because it's a slippery slope. Because they've been quite consistent in their line that they have told for decades that it's non-admission, it's silence, and this plays out with the strategy of revisionism. How can you really revise and really undo years and years of history and collective memory if you... So this is a path-dependent choice, because if they did accept, apologize even, but Sito, say politicians saying sorry, the qualifier there is always credibility. A politician can say sorry 1,000 times, but if he or she is not credible, that is just a word.
Okay. Now, my last question, I don't know, Dan, if you have another.
Go ahead.
But my last question, Professor, is given the fact that there are outstanding legal issues or potential legal issues that the Duterte administration faces in the International Court of Justice, the arbitration over the West Philippine Sea, and even the issue of the religious leader wanted by the FBI, how do you think will this play out under the Marcos administration?
That's also a good question. But Sito, my analysis here is based on previous actions of the Marcoses. Your question is pegged on accountability. So I'll quickly answer with another question. What is the record of Marcos Jr. and his family as far as accountability issues are concerned? And I think we can draw a lot from that.